ladies and gentlemen. I speak to you here once again from my 35 square metres of glorious gym empire, ready to answer your intelligent and insightful questions, and the other ones, and drink schnapps. Our first question tonight comes from Jason, who asks, why are most personal trainers clueless, and why does the industry continue teaching them nonsense? Well, you have a few factors here, Jason. The first is that the industry generally has a low barrier to entry and is dominated by part-time casual work. You can do a certificate 3 and 4 in fitness in as little as 6 weeks, or you can do it online with a relatively low study burden. And they have 20 to 40 hours of practical placement. Practical placement is usually spent dusting treadmills. And then the person is let out onto the public. Now, the teaching generally in personal training schools is of low quality. And that's because the government sets certain minimum things that they have to teach them about, but it's not very high level because it's just a certificate course. It's not a diploma, it's not a university degree, it's just a certification. So it's not desperately high standards. And in any case, you don't need to know all 670 muscles of the human body and their origins and insertions to teach somebody to do a plank. So the standards aren't dreadfully high from the schools. But whether they are or not, they just do their 20 to 40 hours of practical placement. Would you hire an electrician who had done their TAFE course but had not done any practical placement with a master electrician? Or a carpenter or a plumber? Would you hire this person? So why would you hire a trainer who has gone through the school but hasn't done the practical placement? The answer is because you don't have much choice, because none of them have done extensive practical placements. None of them are required to work for a couple of years under a master who is going to teach them everything they need to know. All of them have been sold the idea that they're going to have a 6-figure income in 6 months. And all they need for this is a bright and sunny disposition, and they don't need to know that much. So it has a low barrier to entry. It's dominated by part-time casual work because obviously if you're selling one-on-one personal training sessions, that's going to be casual. Okay, nobody can guarantee you 40 hours of training sessions a week. And gyms are run assuming a large turnover of members and a large turnover of staff. So just like in hospitality, they will give them 4 or 5 hour shifts. If they give them hours on the gym floor at all, they'll give them 4 or 5 hour shifts. 5 hours because after 5 hours you have to give the person a meal break. So it's easier just to have 2 people doing 4 hours than 1 person doing 8 hours. So when somebody starts at a gym, they might have 2 or up to 4, if they're lucky, 4 or 5 hour shifts a week at something like $25 or $30 an hour. In other words, they're getting about the dollar in terms of income. This isn't really a great incentive for professional excellence. As time goes on and the person gets personal training clients, what will tend to happen is that the manager will hire new staff and put them on the gym floor and take shifts off the person who just got themselves lots of clients. So their income goes up for a bit, but the gym shifts and the clients, and then the gym shifts drop off, so their income drops again, and then they build up their clientele and so on. So they never earn a hell of a lot working at Globo gyms, and they're getting up early and they're staying in the place late, and they're just damn tired. So they don't have an incentive for professional excellence, and they don't have a lot of money to pay for training, for weekend seminars and ongoing courses and stuff to improve themselves. And they just don't have a lot of time and energy to do so. As well, the sort of people who go to TAFE to do these short courses, which they're promised they can get work out of quickly, tend to be the younger ones. So we get a lot of enthusiastic amateurs. We get a 19-year-old with a clipboard. And younger people tend to have the feeling that they know stuff already. They are unconsciously incompetent. They just don't realise what they don't know. They think, well, I've been exercising for ages, so I can train people, no problems. And so all this is why I said in my video about becoming a personal trainer that a new trainer should treat their first couple of years as a trainer as an unofficial apprenticeship. You're not going to get the instruction from senior trainers or managers, so you have to take your instruction from talking to a new person every day and teaching them a movement every day and reflecting on it. You have to upskill yourself in that way because the management just doesn't support professional excellence in the area. So what we find in the industry is that most of them never get a job. Most of the people coming out of personal training school don't get a job. It's something like 5%. Most of them didn't look very hard, but still. And of those who get a job, 10% quit each year for the first 4 years, and then in the 5th year, another 40% or something quit. So what you're left with after 5 years is 80% have quit. So experience is the best teacher for them, but there are just not that many who are experienced. And because, as I said, the industry as a whole has a low barrier to entry and is dominated by part-time casual work. The second factor is where we get training information from. So all the articles that you see in magazines and online and a lot of the YouTube posts and the Instagram fitness trainers and blah, blah, blah. The information about training people comes from two sources. One is training newbies and the other is training top athletes. The problem is that for both these groups, everything works so long as you don't injure them. So, why does the body change? The body changes because you ask it to do something that you haven't asked it to do before. So for the newbie, everything works for about 6 weeks. This is the wonderful thing about the newbie effect. The first 6 weeks in the gym, you just do yoga, you will get stronger. You just go for a run, you will get stronger. You just lift weights, you will get fitter. You do Zumba, you do balancing on a Bosu ball. Whatever crazy shit you do, you will get fitter, stronger, and with better joint mobility for about 6 weeks. The two questions are, number one, of those different things, which is optimal? Number two, well, what about after that first 6 weeks? The thing is that most new gym members don't even last 6 weeks. They don't last long enough to find out that this shit has stopped working. So if all you ever train is newbies in their first 6 weeks, whatever crazy stuff you're getting them to do works, and you're convinced that you're a genius. If they last a bit longer, then you have to start thinking about things. So, the second place that we get training advice from is people who train top athletes. But a team of top athletes is not really about training, not really about your coaching ability. It's about recruitment. The typical strength and conditioning coach of, say, a football team has got as much to do with the strength and conditioning of their players as a basketball coach has to do with the height of their players. The basketball coach didn't make them tall. They just chose tall people. The strength and conditioning coach for most football teams doesn't make them strong and fit. They just chose people who are already strong and fit. I went to high school with this guy who, well, we were on the track team together. He did 100 metres, I did 1500 metres, and there was a bunch of other guys, of course. Our coach was, to put it politely, not very good. He took us out to Melbourne Uni racetrack every week, and he had us run 10 lots of 400 metres. So the 1500 metre guy ran 10 by 400, the 100 metre guy did 10 by 400, the 5,000 metre guy did 10 by 400. Can you guess what the 400 metre guy did? There was no coaching of running technique. There was no programming outside those Friday afternoon runs. It was simply, well, coach, should we do something outside? Yeah, you should run. Distance, time, speed, just run. Just run. Okay. The only coaching moment that I recall is one time when the 100 metre guy was off by the side of the track, leaning against a tree, throwing up on it. The coach leaned out of his van where he was eating his sandwiches and called out, "You see that? That's the kind of dedication I want to see from all of yous." That's the only coaching moment that I remember. So we go to an inter-schools meet, and Johnny, the 100 metre guy, runs 100 metres in 10.3 seconds. Was it the coaching? No. John was just fast. He was just a naturally fast motherfucker. Okay, so he goes off to the Victorian Institute of Sport after school. Okay, you get this guy, you're the coach, you get this guy, and he's 18 years old and about, 5'10" or something, about 65 kilograms, and he already runs 100 metres in 10.3. What are you going to do with him? Well, just don't injure him. His natural maturation process from 18 to 22 is going to put another 10 or 15 kilograms on his frame and make him faster and stronger. But leaving that aside, the practical things that you can do now are, well, give him a pair of spikes. Because he ran that 100 metres in plimsolls. Give him a set of spikes to go into that rubber track. And that's going to be a 20th of a second. Work on his start. Because Johnny started from the ground, just crouching down on the ground. Teach him how to use the blocks to start off with. That's a 20th of a second. And then make him a little bit stronger. Say, okay, Johnny, we want you to clean and front squat 60 kilograms and do 10 pull-ups. And we're going to be super cautious about it because we don't want to injure you. We're going to take 12 months to do it. He could do it in, 10 weeks or something, a healthy young guy like that. But we're going to take 12 months to do it. And then that's going to be worth a 20th of a second as well. And then, what do you know? He will run 100 metres in 10.15. Well, the year that we finished school, 1988, the Seoul Olympics, the guy who came last in the 100 metre sprint finals ran it in 10.15. And the other 7 got done for drugs later on. So, well coached, this guy could have been the first Australian to go to the 100 metre finals for a very long time. He was not well coached. They injured him and tore both his hamstrings. After the first time I told this story a few years back, I went and looked him up, and he had run 100 metres at the age of 35 in 11 flat. He was just fast. And it wasn't about the coaching. All they had to do was not injure him, and he would get better. And this is what it is for many top athletes. So when you hear about the latest cryotherapy or CBD oil or one-legged squats on a BOSU or something like that the top athletes are doing, it's got nothing to do with their performance. They were recruited from a talented pool They were not made. They're not taking the guy who runs 100 metres in 15 seconds and getting him to run it in 10. They're taking the guy who runs at 100 metres in 10.3 and getting him to run it in 10.15. They're just getting that last couple of percent. But with those guys, because they're natural athletes, whatever you do, they will get better, so long as you don't injure them. So half the fitness advice out there comes from training newbies for whom everything works, so long as you don't injure them. And the other half comes from training competitive athletes for whom everything works, so long as you don't injure them. What if you're not a newbie? And what if you're not a talented athlete? What then? That's where you need an experienced trainer. This brings us to the third reason that most personal trainers are crap. There is not actually that big a demand for competent personal trainers. The first aspect, as I said, is that most of the gym population consists of newbies. First 6 weeks. In the first 6 weeks, so long as they don't injure you, you cannot tell the difference between the 19-year-old with a clipboard and a Bosu ball and that woman who's 50 years old and been in the gym for 30 years and trained everyone from grandmas to, state volleyball teams. You can't tell the difference between those two trainers if you're that newbie in the first 6 weeks. Now, 6 months later, you can tell the difference, but you can't tell in the first few weeks. So the competent trainers are often missed. As well, there is the issue of would-be client pride and ego and laziness. So there's a laziness, I'm just going to do it on my own for a while. You follow them up months later, these people are never better on their own. And you get people who have been stuck on the same lifts or the same running time or whatever for 12 months, and they report lots of injuries, and then they go to a gym and they meet a competent coach and they choose not to train there. And it's not that they're choosing to train at some other place, they're just not training with any coach or trainer. They're going to do things on their own for a bit. That kind of masculine pride leads to a person spinning their wheels, or worse, hurting themselves. There's just not that demand. Not that big a demand for competent trainers and coaches, for better or worse. It's just not there. Now, I'm fine, but I'm just explaining why there aren't, hundreds out there or thousands out there. Most of them can get away with being crap because most gym members are either newbies, or if they're more experienced ones, they say, I'm going to try it on my own for a while. And then they spin their wheels and hurt themselves. So that, I think, is about it. Yeah. Jason also asks, do you use gym chalk? Yes, of course, Jason, we use gym chalk. So, for those who don't know, the purpose of chalk, when handling barbells, or more rarely dumbbells, is basically your hand gets sweaty and greasy, and you put on chalk and it absorbs it. Same as gymnasts and so on. So it gets you a better grip, because if you can't hold on to the damn thing, then you can't lift it. So of course we use chalk. Some gyms don't like it because it gives them something to vacuum up, but at least it gives you a good filter to know if it's a good gym or not. Do they supply or at least allow chalk? If the answer is no, they're a shit gym, go somewhere else. How about knee braces? I assume you mean knee sleeves. A knee brace would be an orthopedic device prescribed by a doctor or a physiotherapist. We use them when prescribed, but a knee sleeve, so a bit of cloth around the knee. I've noticed a lot of starting strength folks use knee sleeves, but not sure when I should start wearing. Knee sleeves have, so far as I know, I looked up for studies on them, knee sleeves have no proven effect on anyone, intact or injured, whether they do less warm-up or more. They've got no proven effect. There might be some placebo going on. At most, they warm the joint somewhat. So a person whose knee or elbow, if they use elbow sleeves, person whose knee feels kind of creaky and sore while they're lifting, that person may benefit from a bit more warm-up than the person with an entirely healthy knee joint. And that warm-up could include wearing knee sleeves. Yeah, that's about it. Knee sleeves are not in any way harmful, so try them out if you want to. When should you use them? Well, if you feel your joints could benefit with being a bit more warmed. I would say first try an extra warm-up set or two, but if you feel that they could benefit from being warmed up, go ahead and use them. Certainly not harmful. Jesse asked, how would you train a competitive rower? First he asked if someone who's at Olympic level, and my answer was, when I was talking to him in the gym today, my answer was I wouldn't train somebody at that level. The reason I wouldn't train someone who's at a high competitive level is that I'm a trainer, I'm not a coach. A coach is getting different things, because a coach is getting the last 5 to 10% of somebody's possible performance, whereas I as a trainer am getting the first 50% or so of their possible performance. So a coach is getting someone from a 300 to a 310 kilogram squat. I'm getting them to 140 kilogram squat or something. So that's not really my role. I'm a trainer by profession and coach as a hobby, because I take some clients to powerlifting meets and can do weightlifting meets if people want to. But really I'm a trainer, first 50%. The second issue is someone of that level needs everything to be carefully coordinated, because we're talking about them getting their last couple of percent of progress. Because like the example of that guy with the 10.3 second 100 meter sprint versus a 10.15, you're talking about 1 or 2% improvement in performance. That is the difference between first and last place in a final at national level, and international level it's even smaller. Nowadays, the 100 meter sprint final, they're finishing within, I think, a third of a second of each other. So it's a very, very small, you're talking about minute improvements. That needs to be carefully coordinated. So for example, there's no use my giving the guy a squat PR the day before he's rowing the finals. It's just going to ruin his rowing. And the purpose of his lifting is to support his rowing. So that requires some coordination. I would need to know his rowing schedule competitively, and also his rowing schedule with all the other training. The coaches have them do their interval sprints or whatever. Need to know all that to balance things up carefully. So ideally I'd have to be in verbal communication with that coach, and those sorts of coaches are of two kinds. The first kind are those who are against strength training for their athletes, and you do get them in the cycling and rowing and so on world. So they are not going to communicate in a very friendly and helpful manner. And the second kind, fully support lifting, they'll be prescribing the lifting themselves. So at most I would be supervising it, so at most I'll be supervising it. So then Jesse said, well, how about a high school rower? And I said, well, a high school rower, I just build the base of strength, because if he's in high school, he's 16 years old, he's going to be 6 foot tall and 60 kilograms and runty. So he just needs weights to encourage his body to grow into that of a man and get bigger and stronger. He's not going to walk in squatting 140 kilograms on his first day. He's going to squat the empty bar, somewhere between the empty bar and 60 kilograms. So I just build up the base of strength for a healthy young guy like that. And then later on, when he gets really good, he can go to the Victorian or the Australian Institute of Sport, where they can overtrain and injure him and ruin his career. Marion asks, deadlift bar grip, pronated, supinated, pros and cons, full and correct technique, does a mixed grip cause muscle imbalances, etc. Every Q&A, I'm getting questions on deadlift. I'm going to have to make an instructional video on deadlift. I'll see if I can arrange a model fairly soon. Okay, so pronated means palms down, supinated means palms up. You don't deadlift with your palms up. Okay, people just instinctively don't. It feels weird, you wouldn't. You deadlift with your palms down. The advantage of having what we call a mixed grip, where one palm is down and the other one is up, is that it makes the grip stronger. Because what happens is the bar tries to, the bar is trying to roll out of your hand like that. Like that. So if you have the other hand like that, as it tries to roll out of the left hand, it will go more tightly into the right hand. So, because when deadlifting, we're trying to build our grip strength as well as other things, I prescribe a pronated overhand grip, double overhand grip, for as long as the person is physically capable of holding onto the bar, along with the assistance of chalk. Not of straps, but of chalk. When they're regularly dropping the bar and they can't complete their sets because they're losing their grip, then, if the person wants to, we can change to a mixed grip. There is talk of muscle imbalances. In theory, because the hand that is up, the shoulder will be slightly forward compared to the other. There is talk of muscle imbalances, but as I think I said in the first or second Q&A, I'm not terribly worried about muscle imbalances. I'm right-handed, so it means that my right arm is stronger, my right grip is stronger, and my right shoulder is more mobile than my left, because it gets moved around and used more. Do I have to become ambidextrous before I can put a barbell in my hands? Probably not. So if muscle imbalances don't matter when it's right or left-handed, why would they matter in other parts of the body? The question about muscle imbalances is the imbalance gross enough to cause pain or hinder movement? If it causes pain, we don't deal with that in the gym. We refer you for medical advice. If it hinders movement, then we, put in mobility exercises and ones to strengthen the particular weak muscle and involved, and so on. So I'm not terribly worried about muscle imbalances due to a mixed grip. As for injuries, the only injuries that I know of due to a mixed grip are competitive powerlifters using a mixed grip who tear bicep tendon, usually the distal bicep tendon. And what happens is that they're maxing out, and as they're pulling it up, they bend their elbow a little bit. And if you feel in your elbow there, the bicep tendon is rather a small one, it's a bit much to ask the bicep tendon to handle half of your 300 kilogram deadlift. So it pops. That doesn't really happen with a 60 kilogram woman deadlifting 100 or something. This tends to happen to the super heavyweight guys who are using anabolic steroids. It doesn't tend to happen to the natural lifter who's doing, under 50% of the world record. I just mentioned it as a possibility, but I've never seen it happen in my gym. None of the lifters I've taken to competition have injured themselves in this way. I've just seen the super heavyweight guys on anabolic steroids doing it when they're doing their final attempt with some 300 plus kilogram weight. Aside from that, muscle imbalances, injuries due to a mixed grip, I don't think it's an issue, really. I just think you should use double overhand grip for as long as you can to help strengthen your grip. Usually this is not necessary until at least a body weight for work sets deadlift for women and 1.5 times body weight for work sets for men. And I think a large part of the lower amount for women is simply having smaller hands. So if the woman were to deadlift with a 15 kilogram bar, she generally wouldn't have to mix her grip until a bit later on. And some people go for a long career and never mix their grip. Some just do a hook grip or continue a double overhand grip. My best deadlift ever was a double overhand grip. I just don't like using mixed grip personally. But that's just a personal preference. It's not a coaching one. Lahiro asks, water, how important is it to lifting and how much should you drink? Drink when you're thirsty. When I was a kid, we didn't carry around water bottles constantly. And I don't recall anyone perishing of dehydration or being hospitalised or anything. I'm not saying, go for a long run on a 40-degree day and don't drink anything. That would be stupid. But I think when you're in an air-conditioned gym, this isn't, but it's not usually too hot. But when you're in an air-conditioned gym and you're doing a few sets of 5 and sitting around resting 10 or 15 minutes between, you could probably just go to the water fountain and get a mouthful and you're going to be fine. You're not going to be sweating copiously, and so you're not going to perish from dehydration in the middle of your workout. I just don't think it's an issue. It's more of an issue when you're doing cardio because your body temperature gets up so much. But even then, I think you can go half an hour without drinking a stack. You'll just have a slightly dry mouth like I do now, which I'm correcting with schnapps. Okay. Rant of the week. This is what I'm angry about this week. Diet. There is a fitness guru at the moment telling people how he did an intermittent fasting diet where he had 800 calories a day for 5 days, which for him consisted of 50 olives, 20 almonds, and some veggie soup. He didn't mention what happened on the other 2 days. I presume it was a panked binge. This is an excellent way to create an emotional relationship with food, a dysfunctional relationship with food, to mess you up. You do not need to starve yourself. You do not need to cut out whole food groups, whether they be meat or grains or anything else. Unless you have a medical problem diagnosed by a doctor, naturopath and chiropractor don't count, diagnosed by a medical doctor and assisted by a dietitian, unless you have some issue like that, just eat normal food. What is normal food? It is sad that it must be asked in these days. Basically, if 80% of your food shopping is at the butchers, the fishmongers, or the greengrocers, you're probably doing all right. Look up the Australian dietary guidelines. They are poorly written. The idea is the prescription is good, but they are poorly and unclearly written. They boil down to having 3 cups of veggies a day, 3 pieces of fruit, 3 cups of cooked grains, 3 serves of dairy, where a serve of dairy is a cup of milk, or 200 mils or 200 grams of yogurt, or 40 grams of hard cheese, and 3 serves of meat or fish or beans, with a serve of meat being a palm-sized piece, about 100 grams, and a serve of beans being a cup of cooked beans. You also have 0 to 3 discretionary serves a day. By discretionary, they mean things like alcohol, but also extra serves from those other food groups. So the veggies, meat and dairy that I suggested just now are a little bit more than the Australian dietary guidelines, but that falls into your discretionary foods, so it's not a big deal. And I don't think many dietitians would be concerned that you had a little bit extra veggies or a little bit extra meat, unless you have family history of heart disease or something. But I'm not saying you should eat red meat all day every day. That would be stupid. Anyway, 3 cups of veggies, 3 pieces of fruit, 3 cups of cooked grain or 2 slices of bread are equivalent. Mostly whole grain. 3 serves of dairy, mostly reduced fat. 3 pieces of meat, fish, or a cup of beans daily. If you do that, you're going to be all right. If your dietary needs are more complex than that, then you probably need professional advice. If you're diabetic, if you are obese, and that sort of thing, or arthritis, a few things. But then you need professional help. So you don't go on a YouTube video, go and ask a dietitian. But don't do a fad diet. Don't mess with your head. Do not fuck yourself up, physically or mentally. Just eat normal food. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my rant of the week. Remember, as always, I have told you one way to do things. There are many ways to do things. My way is the right way. So do it my way. If you do not, then you fail. And strong is not for you. Good night.